Somewhere in a Consumer Reports testing facility this spring, a scoring sheet got filled out for a brand new pickup that posted the worst reliability score of any truck the magazine has ever evaluated in its entire history of testing trucks. Not the electric one with the stainless panels that peel off in the wind. Not the one with the bearing problem that's already tied up in federal court. A truck that, 3 months earlier, a completely different major survey had just crowned the most dependable in its entire class. Both of those things are true about the same nameplate at the same time, and by the end of this list, you'll understand exactly how that's possible, and why it should change how you read every single reliability ranking you ever look at again. The pattern under all 15. Here's the thread running through every single truck on this list, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. For most of the last 70 years, a pickup truck earned its reputation the boring way: a big, low-stressed engine, a simple transmission, and not much wiring between the two. It made its power by being large, not by being clever, and because nothing was working hard, nothing tended to break. Somewhere in the last 15 years, that changed. Fuel economy rules tightened. Marketing departments got a seat at the engineering table, and the industry discovered you could take a smaller engine, force air into it under pressure, wrap the whole truck in cameras and touchscreens, and sell it as progress. Some of it genuinely is progress. All of it is also one more thing that can fail, one more part you can't fix yourself, and one more line item that quietly serves somebody's balance sheet instead of the truck's lifespan. And this year gave us a strange new wrinkle in that story, because two of the biggest names in the reliability business, J.D. Power and Consumer Reports, looked at the same nameplates in 2026 and came back with almost opposite verdicts. J.D. Power surveys owners 3 years after purchase and asks what's gone wrong since. Consumer Reports leans harder on the newest model years and current owner complaints. When those two methods agree, you can trust the result completely. When they don't agree, which happened constantly this year, that disagreement is usually telling you something happened partway through a generation, a running change, a supplier swap, a software update that split the truck's reputation right down the middle. Keep that tension in your head as we go. It explains more of this list than any single engine failure does, and it's the reason the number one truck on this countdown is going to surprise almost everybody watching. One more thing before we start counting, because I want to be upfront about how this list came together. I pulled reliability data, recall filings, and court documents that were current as of this summer, not a single recycled headline from a year or two ago. Some of these trucks have gotten worse since the last time anybody made a video like this. A couple of them have actually gotten better, which is a detail most countdown videos conveniently skip past because it doesn't fit the doom and gloom narrative nearly as neatly. Let's count them down and find out which is which. 15. Ford Ranger. Last year, the Ranger was sitting near the top of the midsize pack for reliability, genuinely one of the better bets in the segment, the kind of truck a shopper could recommend to a friend without hedging. This year, it fell to below average with nothing dramatic pointing to why. No single catastrophic failure, no headline-grabbing recall, just a truck that quietly stood still while everything around it got better. Owners report a steady drumbeat of cabin rattles that make a 2-year-old truck feel considerably older, along with a handful of recalls that keep pulling buyers back to the service department for issues that never should have made it out of the factory in the first place. It's not a disaster. It's the truck equivalent of a student who used to get straight A's suddenly bringing home a C with nobody quite able to point at the one assignment that tanked the grade, which is somehow more unsettling than an obvious failure would have been. 14. Nissan Titan. The regret here isn't mechanical, it's existential. Nissan wound down Titan production back in 2024 because almost nobody was buying them, and a nameplate nobody's buying eventually becomes a nameplate nobody's supporting. The 5.6-liter V8 under the hood is an honest, old-school engine that will run for a very long time without complaint. The kind of engine I have a genuine soft spot for, but an engine being good doesn't matter much when the dealer network thins out. The parts counter gets slower, and resale values start sliding specifically because buyers get nervous about owning an orphan. Find a well-kept used one, and it can be a genuine workhorse for cheap, honestly, one of the better sleeper deals on the used market right now. Buy one new today, though, and you're volunteering to own a truck the company that built it has already mentally moved on from waving at you from the rearview mirror as it drives off toward its next lineup, leaving you and your dealer's dwindling parts inventory to figure out the rest together. 13. Toyota Tundra. Toyota's entire reputation was built on engines that just run decade after decade without so much as a second thought from the owner, and the redesigned Tundra spent its first few years actively testing that reputation to the breaking point. The twin-turbo 3.4-liter V6 under the hood has been dogged by main-bearing failures, oil pressure collapsing to zero, and the engine seizing, in some cases at highway speed, traced back to manufacturing debris left inside the block. Toyota has now been through this recall more than once, and replacement engines have, in some cases, failed the exact same way, which is the detail that should genuinely worry you more than the original recall did, because it means the fix and the flaw might be the same thing wearing a different serial number. Stack a recall for blank backup cameras and another for tonneau covers that can physically detach at speed on top of that, and you've got a truck wearing a badge that earned trust with a completely different engine than the one currently under the hood. 12. Jeep Gladiator. The Gladiator is a Wrangler with a bed, and it inherited every single one of the Wrangler's quirks along with the off-road hardware people actually want, for better and for considerably worse. The solid front axle that lets it climb like nothing else in its class is the same architecture responsible for the death wobble, a violent shake through the steering that shows up when worn steering linkage hits a bump wrong at speed. And if you've never felt it, count yourself lucky. The electrical side isn't any kinder. The truck runs a second smaller auxiliary battery, and when that battery starts to degrade, it quietly drains the main battery right along with it, leaving owners stranded with zero warning, usually in a parking lot rather than anywhere convenient. Add trailer wiring that's prone to leaking and tripping false brake fault codes, and you've got a truck people buy with their heart and immediately start negotiating with their patience, one warning light at a time. 11. Ford F-150 Lightning. This one hurts because the people who actually own one mostly love it, quiet, quick, genuinely useful around town, and then Ford pulled the plug on it late last year after billions in losses across its electric division and pivoted back toward hybrids. So now you own a truck the company that built it has already walked away from, which is a strange feeling to have about a vehicle you're still making payments on. There was a battery recall on early trucks tied to a cell defect that could short and start a fire, with owners told to stop charging past 80% until it was addressed. Towing anything meaningful collapses the range hard, which is a rough discovery for a vehicle whose entire job description is towing things. And the depreciation has been brutal, with early buyers watching a large share of the purchase price evaporate within just a couple of years, long before the truck itself had done anything wrong. 10. Chevrolet Silverado, 1500 and GMC Sierra 1500, same truck, same plant. So we're counting them together, which is only fair since GM's own engineers clearly do too. The 6.2-liter V8 available in these trucks uses a cylinder deactivation system that relies on small locking pins. And when those pins stick, the result is violent misfires, bent push rods, and a chewed-up cylinder head, a repair nobody wants to discover is theirs on a Monday morning. The problem has been widespread enough that Chevrolet has issued stop sale orders, meaning dealers were legally barred from selling trucks that were sitting right there on the lot, engines and all. Choose the smaller turbocharged 4-cylinder to dodge the V8 drama entirely, and you run into leaking radiator hoses instead, which feels like trading one problem for a smaller, damper version of the same problem. Layer in electrical gremlins, shorting low-voltage harnesses, and keyless entry systems that fail at random. And you understand why this platform keeps showing up near the bottom of independent reliability surveys, despite being one of the best-selling trucks in the country. 9. GMC Sierra 2500 HD and Chevrolet Silverado 2500 HD. Heavy-duty trucks are bought specifically to work hard, and this pairing has been struggling to show up for the job, which is about the worst thing you can say about a truck built specifically for towing and hauling. Diesel models paired with the Allison transmission have shown shift lag and harsh, jarring engagements. The kind of behavior you'd forgive in a truck with 200,000 miles on it, not a brand new rig costing well into six figures. The exhaust after-treatment system has its own separate problem: clogged particulate filters and failed urea injectors that can drop the truck into a countdown limp mode, severely restricting speed on the way to the dealer, usually with a trailer still hooked up behind it. And the Silverado half of this pair carries something genuinely alarming on top of all that: a recall covering a trailer brake module that can overheat, melt, and in the worst cases catch fire on a truck engineered specifically to spend its life towing heavy loads behind it. That's not a comfort feature failing quietly in the background. That's the exact system meant to keep a loaded trailer under control, turning into the hazard itself. 8. GMC Hummer EV. This one is almost a case study in how badly numbers can add up when nobody stops to ask whether they should. The truck weighs somewhere around 9,000 pounds, closer to a small building than a vehicle, and it depreciates like one of the buildings just got condemned by the city. Real-world examples show trucks that stickered well into six figures changing hands for a fraction of that within a couple of years, sometimes with barely any miles on the odometer at all, which tells you the depreciation curve on this thing has nothing to do with wear and everything to do with math. Owners have reported software glitches, high voltage faults, and in some genuinely ugly cases, battery packs failing more than once within the first several thousand miles, leading straight to lemon law buybacks. When a truck this expensive gets compared by its own owners to one of the worst financial decisions of their lives, that's the review that actually matters, more than any horsepower figure on the window sticker. 7. Tesla Cybertruck. Where do you even start? Outward visibility is genuinely compromised by the thick pillars and sloped stainless body, which pushes drivers to lean hard on camera feeds that occasionally lag or drop out entirely at the exact moment you need them most, usually while backing up around something you'd very much like to keep unbroken. Moving essential functions like the gear selector and turn signals onto the touchscreen and steering wheel capacitive buttons means a locked-up system can leave you stuck with no manual backup, which is a genuinely strange design choice for a vehicle marketed as apocalypse-ready. On the failure side, owners have reported sudden high-voltage shutdowns that fully immobilize the truck, along with steering rack fasteners, shearing, and brake lights failing after water gets where it shouldn't. Add rust spots showing up on a body that was marketed as effectively indestructible, and a resale value that's collapsed hard enough that some early buyers are watching a third of their purchase price disappear in the first year alone. 6. Chevrolet Colorado and GMC Canyon. Same platform, same plant, same headaches, so they get one slot together, twins in reliability, the same way they're twins on the assembly line. The most alarming issue here is a genuine safety hazard: cold weather conditions that cause the electronic brake assist to fail and force the truck into a hard limp mode capped around 43 miles an hour. Exactly the kind of malfunction you do not want happening on an icy highway on ramp with someone tailgating you. Mechanically, the 8-speed automatic carries a classic torque converter shudder during low-speed deceleration that you feel through your whole body in the driver's seat. The sort of vibration that makes passengers ask if something's wrong even when you've stopped noticing it yourself. And software updates meant to improve the infotainment system have instead been keeping control modules awake overnight, quietly draining the 12-volt battery and leaving more than a few owners stranded in their own driveway, jumper cables in hand before their morning coffee. 5. Rivian R1T. There's real respect owed to Rivian here. They actually built the thing and beat the legacy giants to market with something genuinely clever, which is more than most startups in this space can claim. But respect and reliability are different conversations, and this is where the young company's inexperience shows up in the owner's driveway. Air suspension systems have been known to burn out their own compressors and drop the truck straight onto its bump stops, frequently requiring a flatbed tow to one of a still fairly small number of service centers, some of which are a genuine haul from wherever the truck happened to break down. Owners have also reported drive unit failures and steering pull, and the 12-volt auxiliary battery, when it finally gives out, can take the entire truck down with it, sometimes requiring a full wiring harness and battery replacement just to get the thing running again, an oddly large repair for what sounds like a small, forgettable component. The running costs aren't cheap either, and combined with steep early depreciation, you end up with a truck that costs a genuine fortune to own even in the months when absolutely nothing is wrong with it. 4. Ford F-150. Yes, the best-selling vehicle in America, and no, I'm not telling you to avoid it outright. I'm telling you that the company building it just finished the single worst recall year any automaker has ever posted, by a distance that isn't close. Ford issued 153 separate recalls in 2025, nearly doubling the previous industry record of 77 set by General Motors back in 2014. And those recalls together touched almost 13 million vehicles, more than the next 9 automakers combined managed put together. And this year isn't slowing down either, with tens of millions more vehicles already touched by recall notices by summer, including a single campaign covering more than 4 million trucks from the F-Series lineup specifically. Despite all of that, Consumer Reports actually just named the F-150 a top pick for the first time since 2019, citing genuinely improved reliability, strong powertrains, and a simple, usable cabin. Both of those facts are true about the same truck in the same year, which tells you Ford has gotten remarkably good at finding its own problems and remarkably slow at making sure they never happen in the first place, and figuring out which version of that story describes the specific truck sitting on your dealer's lot is basically impossible until you're already the owner. It's the automotive version of a restaurant that keeps getting written up by the health inspector while somehow also winning a Food Critic Award the same season. 3. Ford Super Duty with the Power Stroke Diesel. This is the one that can turn an ordinary drive into a 5-figure catastrophe, and it comes down to one small, unglamorous part most owners never think about until it's already too late. The high-pressure fuel pump used on these diesels was engineered around cleaner, more lubricating fuel than what typically comes out of a pump in the United States. And starved of that lubrication, it can wear against itself until it fails. When it fails, it doesn't fail quietly. It grinds itself into metal shavings and pushes them straight through the rest of the fuel system, contaminating injectors and lines along the way like sand poured into an engine. At that point, you're not replacing a pump, you're rebuilding an entire fuel system, a repair that regularly runs into the 5 figures and can sideline a work truck for weeks. You buy an $80,000 or $90,000 work truck specifically to avoid this kind of surprise, and there's a landmine sitting quietly in the fuel system waiting for nothing more dramatic than the wrong tank of gas on a truck bought precisely because it was supposed to be the one you never had to think about. 2. The GM 6.2-liter V8, known as the L87. This is the story that's still actively unfolding, and it's gotten worse, not better, since it first made headlines a couple of years ago. General Motors recalled close to 600,000 trucks and SUVs carrying this engine last year over a manufacturing defect in the connecting rods and crankshaft bearings that can cause sudden, total engine seizure, sometimes with only a few thousand miles on the odometer, no warning knock, no check engine light, just silence where the engine used to be. The remedy for engines that passed inspection was, and I promise I'm not simplifying this for effect, thicker oil. And here's the part that should genuinely alarm you. Owners are still reporting engines seizing after receiving that exact fix, in some cases at barely over 1,000 miles past the repair, which is not the kind of number that should exist if the fix actually worked. Multiple lawsuits have since been consolidated into a single federal case representing owners nationwide, running close to 400 pages by the time it landed in court. And this past January, regulators opened an entirely new inquiry, specifically to find out whether trucks that already went through the recall are failing all over again. General Motors is currently asking a court to dismiss the whole case, arguing the recall already fixed the problem and the owners have nothing left to win. The federal safety regulator investigating it doesn't sound nearly as convinced, and until that disagreement gets settled in a courtroom rather than a press release, anybody driving one of these trucks is stuck living inside the gap between what GM says is fixed and what the government still isn't sure about. 1. Ram 1500. And here's the twist I promised you at the very top. Just months after one major survey named the Ram 1500 the most dependable large pickup truck in America, a completely different, equally respected survey handed it the single worst reliability score any pickup truck has ever received in that publication's history, an almost apocalyptic result for a truck wearing a crown from the other end of the industry. The trouble starts with something almost embarrassingly small, a keyless entry system with a parasitic drain that quietly kills the battery overnight, cascading into electrical faults across the truck by morning, a dead truck before the coffee's even finished brewing. Under the hood, the new Hurricane Twin Turbo Inline-6 has been linked to melted catalytic converters and coolant working its way into the intake, both of which can end in complete engine failure. Even buyers who specifically chose the returning Hemi V8 to dodge the new engine's growing pains have reported broken exhaust manifold bolts in the same lifter tick that's followed that engine for years, proof that switching engines inside the same truck doesn't always switch you out of the truck's problems. Stack a recall for trailer brake modules that can catch fire, and another for dashboard screens that go dark without warning on top of all of that, and you get a score low enough that it means nearly every single owner surveyed reported multiple, serious problems with a truck that, on paper, 3 years down the road, is supposed to be the most dependable one on the lot. Somewhere between those two surveys sits an actual truck in an actual driveway, and depending on exactly when it rolled off the line, it could genuinely be either one. Now I have to be fair to both surveys because that's the deal on this channel, and the contradiction sitting at the top of this list deserves an honest explanation rather than just a dramatic one. J.D. Power's dependability study looks specifically at 3-year-old trucks from an earlier model year, which means it's measuring an older Ram 1500 built before this generation's newest electronics and engine lineup arrived. Consumer Reports is leaning much more heavily on the newest model years and the freshest owner complaints. Those two studies aren't actually disagreeing about the same truck. They're each accurately describing a different chapter of the same nameplate's life, one from 3 years ago and one from right now. And the uncomfortable truth is that both chapters can be true at once, which is exactly the kind of nuance a thumbnail can never fit. It's also worth saying plainly that recalls themselves don't automatically mean a truck is unsafe to drive today. A recall is often the system working exactly as designed, a problem getting identified, and a fix getting issued before it turns into something worse, rather than a manufacturer sitting quietly on a defect. Ford's historic recall year, as embarrassing as the headline number is, partly reflects the company deliberately casting a wider net and moving faster on smaller issues than it used to, which is a genuinely different failure mode than an engine quietly seizing with no warning at all. Ford itself has said as much, pointing to an expanded safety team and more aggressive internal testing as the reason the numbers look the way they do, and there's at least some independent data backing that up in the form of improving warranty costs even as recall counts climbed. And several of the trucks lower on this list, the Rivian, the Cybertruck, remain genuinely beloved by the people who actually drive them every day, proof that satisfaction and dependability are measuring two completely different things. A truck can leave you stranded on a Tuesday and still be the vehicle you'd recommend to your own brother on a Wednesday, and both of those reactions can be perfectly sincere, which is exactly the kind of contradiction a 5-word thumbnail was never built to hold. So here's where I actually land on all 15 of these, standing in front of that same scoring sheet from the top of this video. A truck used to earn its reputation slowly, the boring way, one honest year at a time, until everybody eventually agreed on what it was. This year, for the first time in a long time, the two biggest names in the reliability business couldn't even agree on the basic facts about several of these nameplates, and that disagreement is the real story, more than any single bearing or any single battery. The machine underneath these trucks has gotten complicated enough that even the professionals paid to measure it are starting to talk past each other, which is a strange place for an industry built on trust to find itself. If you want the honest version of any truck on this list, don't trust the badge, and don't trust just one survey. Find the specific model year, the specific engine, and the specific complaint, and ask whether that particular combination has actually been fixed yet, or whether it's just been given thicker oil in a press release. That one question, asked before you sign anything, will tell you more than any list, mine included, ever could, and it costs you nothing but 5 extra minutes at the dealership before you commit to 7 years of payments. So tell me in the comments which one of these you're driving right now, and whether it's been the truck the badge promised you or the one hiding underneath it. Tell me too if you've ever owned a truck that 2 different surveys couldn't agree on, because I have a feeling a lot of you have a story exactly like that sitting in your own driveway right now, and I genuinely want to hear it. I rate every single one of these, and half of what ends up in future videos comes straight out of what you tell me down there. If this one earned your subscription, stay close, because next time we're finally doing the one I've been promising: lifetime transmission fluid. The factories seal it, throw away the dipstick, and tell you it's filled for life. I'll show you exactly whose life they're talking about, and it isn't yours. I'll see you in the next one.